Just brought home my latest find. This is an old Lane cabinet. I paid about $11 for it, which may have been $11 too much, but I think it can be saved. This was made by the Lane Furniture Company, and I'm guessing by the looks of it, probably in the early 70s or late 60s. Lane started making some kind of chunkier looking stuff in that time period. And I think this piece kind of looks a bit chunky. It has been painted, unfortunately, but just on the sides. So hopefully I can get that paint off without too much trouble. The top is in terrible shape. Hopefully I can save that veneer. I'm hoping some oxalic acid can help the black stains on it. I don't think the knobs are original. Well, I know these knobs aren't original. And there's an extra hole here that's not being used, probably from the original handles. So I'll have to do something about that. And the inside of the doors is in really good shape. And you can see how nice the veneer is. So I'm hoping that I can get the outside to look like this. First thing I want to do is try and remove the paint. And it's only about -3 degrees Fahrenheit out here right now, but that's okay because I'm going to use a heat gun to remove the paint, hopefully, if this works. Okay, it's the next day, and it's still below zero out here, but I want to try and scrape what's left of the finish off of the top. I've already started in a small spot here. It looks like it's working. So let's see how it goes. So I got the finish scraped off, what was left of it. There really wasn't that much on there. But I did notice something. There are a lot of these kind of swirly, curly Q marks on the top. Hopefully you can see it on the camera. And they look like marks from an orbital sander. So I don't know if somebody maybe already tried to refinish this or tried to sand the finish off of it and left those marks. But I'm just hoping it's not a problem, because there's only so much sanding I can do on here to get stuff like that out because it's a veneer. We'll see. It's day 3, and it's even colder than it was yesterday. It's only about -6 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So I think it's time to bring this project inside. Yesterday I got the top scraped and then sanded lightly just to remove anything I missed with the scraper. And now I want to try some oxalic acid, but it's way too cold out here to apply that. It'll just freeze right away. So I'd rather not have to haul this whole thing inside and down the stairs to the basement. So I'm going to see if I can remove this top. I think it may be held on by screws. Hopefully just by screws and not glue. But we'll see. Okay, so I tried taking the top off by removing the screws, but it's glued on as well, so I didn't want to try to force it off. Probably would have just caused more damage. So I'm just going to leave the top on, and I'm going to haul the whole thing inside and into the basement. But first, I'm going to remove the doors just to make it a little easier to carry. Okay, I've got the cabinet inside, and I'm going to apply the oxalic acid now. Well, the weather warmed up a bit, so I'm back outside. It's above freezing now, at least, so I can continue work here in the garage. So the oxalic acid didn't help that much. Most of the dark marks are still on the tabletop, which makes me think that they're probably not from water sitting on the top, or else the oxalic acid probably would have cleared them up. I also tried a little bit of stripper to see if that would get up the whatever that dark stuff is, but it didn't help much. So I think my last resorts are sanding and scraping. And of course, especially with the sanding, that has the risk of sanding through the veneer. But the veneer is looking pretty bad anyway, so there's a chance I might have to either put new veneer on it or, who knows, maybe even paint it. We'll see. First thing I'm going to try is just scraping on some of those dark areas and see if I can clean it up with the scraper. Okay, I'm done scraping, and it looks a lot better than it did, but there is still some of that dark stuff on here, so I'm going to try very carefully sanding a little more with some 120 grit. Here's the top after scraping and sanding to 180 grit. and it looks a lot better than it did. I think I'm just going to leave it here. I'm not going to do any more sanding or scraping. I'd probably end up going through the veneer if I did. So this is as good as it's going to get. On the doors, I'm just going to use the scraper to get the finish off. There's really not much finish left on here. It shouldn't take too long. And now I'm just going to clean them up a little further with some 120 grit sandpaper. Okay, so here's the door after sanding and scraping, and looks pretty good. I think these dark sections might be rosewood. Not sure though. But yeah, it's not too bad looking. I do have to do something about the holes from the handles, but I'll figure that out a little later. All right, so I think today I can start putting some finish on this, and I'm going to start with the top. And I'm going to use some stain on this, partly because this middle section is a lot lighter than the outer section. And I'm not usually a big fan of that high contrast look on furniture, so I want to see if I can put some stain on here and try to bring the middle closer to the outer part. And also, there's a lot of imperfections on this top, and hoping the stain might help to cover some of those. Although you have to be careful, because if you have some scratches, the stain might actually make those stand out even more, because it'll fill them up, and they could show up even more than they did before. And I'm going to use antique walnut gel stain. And now, before this dries, I'm going to take a paper towel wet with some mineral spirits and just wipe it along the outer parts, the dark parts, because I don't need those any darker than they were. So I want to try and clean off some of the stain from those parts without taking it off the middle part like I just did here. So I'm going to put a little bit more stain there and wipe off the excess. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then just very carefully, I'm going to keep going around the outer parts. And you may have noticed earlier when I was wiping this door down that one of these sections is a lot lighter than the rest. So I'm going to do the same stain on just this one part, just to bring it closer to the other sections. At the factory, when this was made, they probably just sprayed the whole thing with a tinted lacquer that would have brought everything sort of into the same color range. So that's probably why this didn't look so bright, so light when I first got the piece. But I'm going to use stain instead of tinted lacquer. So that should do it. Instead of trying to find new handles for the doors, I'm just going to install these latches here that will allow me to not use any door handles. You just push it and it releases the door, and that will replace these standard magnetic latches they had. And first thing I'm going to do is fill the old screw holes in the doors. And to fill those, I'm going to use one of these hard fill sticks and just melt it in there, fill them up. First thing I want to do is to fill the holes just with some, I think this is part of a chopstick. Just put these in there so that I don't have to fill the entire hole with this stick. So I just want a little backer in there. Then I'll wipe it down, just get it wet so that I can see what the color of the wood will be once some clear finish is on it. And I want to try to get as close to that color as I can with the stick, and this is probably the closest that I have. And then I can just melt it in. And once it's dry, I can level it out. And I think I have a low spot right in the corner of this one here. So I'll put some more in. That looks pretty good. A little later, after I get some finish on here, if I want to try to blend it in a little more, I can take a dark fine tip marker and put a few grain lines going through it so that it blends in a little bit more. Because right now the grain lines just kind of stop and then start again. But the color is pretty close. Okay, now I can put the latches on. And I'm going to reuse this metal plate here. The latches came with their own, but I can just use that. And the way I'm going to do this is to just stick it on there and then close the door. And I don't want it shut all the way. I want to let it out maybe like a 1/16 of an inch because that plunger thing on the latch needs room to go in and then pop out. So just very carefully hold the latch on there, open the door, and then I have to get in here and make the screw holes while I hold that there, and that's going to be kind of tricky, but we'll see how it goes. All right, I got the latches installed and they work. They work great. Okay, it's time to spray the lacquer top coat, and it's only about 34 degrees Fahrenheit outside where I'm going to be spraying, so it's probably not recommended to spray in that kind of weather, but we'll see if it works. Seems to be working just fine. And here it is, all finished. The lacquer worked out fine. No problems with that. Thanks for watching.